right? When it comes to skills, there's very little skills we're born with, but all the skills you have today were developed later in life. So today we're going to focus on the 9 truths of how you develop the skill of persuasion. There's many aspects of corporate success that depend on the skill of persuasion. I'm going to talk to you about the 9 fundamentals of the mastering the art of persuasion. And notice there are 9. So why 9? I'm very excited with the number 9 because 9 is the number for truth. And so today, essentially what I'm going to be talking about are the truths to mastering the skill of persuasion. And it really is a skill. A lot of people ask me, well, I need to be more persuasive. They're aware of that. But there's a misconception that people are born with it, right? When it comes to skills, there's very little skills we're born with. Like all of us were born on even keel. We could not speak, we did not know our own name, and we couldn't say hello when someone said hello to us back. So we're born with a limited number of skills. But all the skills you have today were developed later in life. So today we're going to focus on the 9 truths of how you develop the skill of persuasion. Now, in order for me to share with you the 9 truths, the 9 fundamentals, I'm going to be breaking it down into 3 sets of skills, sub-skills under persuasion, if you will. The first 3 are the 3 fundamentals when it comes to marketing. The next 3 that I'm going to share 3 fundamentals in sales. And then finally, there will be 3 fundamentals in branding. So there's 3 areas. There's the marketing, there's sales, and there's branding. And notice that this corresponds very well to a business. In business, these are fundamentals for business as well. You need to have a good sales process. You need to have marketing. You need to have branding as well. So this corresponds nicely because you work in a business and you desire to achieve career success while working in a business. So let's get started. 3 fundamentals in marketing. When it comes to marketing, so many people mistake marketing for promotions. They think about carrying a loudspeaker and promoting your idea, promoting your offer. But marketing is not promoting. And marketing is also not advertising. Marketing is different. So let me offer you a definition of marketing. It's important for me to share with you a definition of marketing so that we're on the same page and you'll be better able to understand the 3 fundamentals when we get to the essence of what marketing is. So here's what marketing is in simplest terms. Marketing is discovering and developing in others a desire to have more of what you offer. There's discovering and there's developing. So then discovering in them means discovering what it would take, how to increase the perception of value of what you're offering. You discover that, and then developing them that desire as well. Once they initially discover the value, you develop in them greater value for it, so they come back to you for more. So that's what marketing is. And by the way, marketing is both an art and a science. The art part of marketing is what creates feeling in your audience. Think about it. All of you have been exposed to great marketing, and so good that you didn't even know you were being marketed to, but it increased your desire for that, what they were selling to you, so you go out and buy it, or you go out and you want more of it, and you consume more of it. And marketing is good when you don't know that you're being marketed to. So the art part is what creates the feeling. You have a feeling that you would resonate with that. You have a feeling that when you purchase that item, that it would improve your life. You have a feeling that that's what you really desire. It's connecting with something inside of you. So that's the art part. Elevating the desire, elevating the sense of gratitude for coming across it. That's the art part. The science part of marketing is the outcome that you can measure. So this is really important. What are you measuring in your marketing? Are you measuring how many yeses you get? Are you measuring in terms of a KPI? Are you measuring in terms of an accountability metric? Is it a performance metric or an accountability metric? So this is really important. That's the science part. Marketing is both an art and a science of discovering and developing in others a desire to have more of what you're offering. Now, what you're offering might be an idea. It might be a project that you want to begin. It might be a budget that you want to have for your teams. It might be a increased headcount. It might be a solution that you want to put out there that you really do believe in. But what's your offer? It's really important to understand what you are marketing. Not the features of what you're marketing, but the solution for your marketplace. So with that, now, this is just the introduction. Now, the introduction to marketing. Now, let's go into the 3 fundamentals of marketing. The first fundamental of marketing is to be prolific and profound in your message. It's the message that develops and discovers in your audience a desire for what you have to offer. It's the message. So be prolific and profound in your message. So what does it mean to be prolific? Prolific means to be everywhere, right? What are the opportunities you have to be everywhere with your message? In other words, say it often. Say it in the meetings. Say it in your one-on-ones. Say it in your interactions. Say it in your presentations. Say it in your contributions. Say it in your conversations. Say it in the hallway conversations. So be prolific in your messages. Look for opportunities to share your marketing messages. Look for opportunities to develop in people a desire for what you're going to offer. Most people don't get this. Most people wait until the point of sale to do their marketing. So what's the point of sale? The point of sale is the meeting, or it's the actual conversation in front of stakeholders where you need to get their buy-in. That 20 minutes or that 90 minutes, that conversation is your point of sale. And if you want to get buy-in and you haven't done the marketing in advance, then the heavy lifting is in that 30 minutes. It's in that 90 minutes. And in a business, think about it. If a business wants to sell their products and offering and they don't participate in any marketing activities and they're trying to get to at the point of sale, then the heavy lifting is not sufficient to get that sale. So this is really important, to be prolific in your messagings so that you have the time and you're developing in your audience the desire. It's a process. So this is the prolific part. What does it mean to be profound in your messages? Being profound in your messages means that your messages, you say it well. So say it well and say it often. What does saying it well mean? It means that the art part of marketing, that you're creating, soliciting in your audience a feeling, a desire for what you have to offer, a sense of urgency, an appreciation, an aha moment, a spark of inspiration, and awe, shock and awe even. So those are emotions that are really good feelings to solicit in your marketing. Being prolific and profound in your messages also means that you're not hiding from your presence. Think about it. How many of you have ever been told that one of the most important things to focus on is your executive presence? Have you ever been told that in your performance reviews? Have you ever been told that in your one-on-ones with your manager, that there's an opportunity to work on your presence? Not hiding in your presence is part of marketing. It's part of being prolific and profound in your messages. Do not hide from your presence. Be present, and be present everywhere. Be present whenever you are present. There's a physical presence, but there's also an energetic presence. And that's where your prolific and your profound can be in when you share your messages. So say it well and say it often. That's the first fundamental of marketing. The second fundamental of marketing is to think from the marketplace. Now, in a business, every business has a mission. And inside of that mission, there's clarity on who are our customers and what do we do for them? What is the result we produce for our customers? So this is the same for you, translating that principle from your marketing message. Who do you serve? Who are you trying to sell to? Who are you trying to market to? In what audience are you trying to develop and to discover greater desire for what you have to offer? That is your marketplace. For example, it could be your managers, it could be your senior leaders, it could be your stakeholders, internal and external. So who is your marketplace? Who do you need to get that yes from? So think from the marketplace. What does it mean to think from the marketplace? Thinking from the marketplace is different from thinking of the marketplace. A lot of people, when they're trying to be persuasive, they go just as far as thinking of the marketplace, which means they think about, okay, who am I meeting with? Who do I got to get to the yes? And what do I got to say to them? What might they say to me? So that's thinking of the marketplace. Now, thinking from the marketplace is really getting that clarity, the granularity of clarity of what do they really value? Where are their problems? Where are they currently? And where do they want to be? What is the priority in their lives, and what are they dedicated to in their career paths? What is the structure in that influences their perspectives and the way they assess situations? Getting that clarity is thinking from the marketplace. When you think from the marketplace, it's no longer about you. It's no longer about what you want to sell them. It's no longer about your perspective, but it's really getting in a place where you can serve them to your highest level. Because that's truly the most profound marketing message you can have is a marketing message that's created and developed when you think from the marketplace. So that's the second fundamental. The third fundamental of marketing is to build in the cost of success. So what do I mean by that? You work for a company, and the company is a business. One of the most important functions of a business is to be profitable and to be able to sustain that success in profitability into the future. So you've joined the company for a reason, and chances are you joined them because they are successful, because they take a stand in the marketplace, because they offer value, they change the world somehow. And it's important to be able to see the path of their success. It's easy to see the end result of their success and desire to be a part of that because it's bigger than you, because you want to be part of a winning team, and that's fair. But on the flip side of it, have you ever thought that because you are a member of that company, they've hired you for a reason? One of the most important things to develop is a sense of fiscal responsibility. What is fiscal responsibility? It's being able to serve the business and give the business what it needs to sustain that success. One important part of fiscal responsibility is understanding the cost of success. What did it cost the business to have the success that it does? And make no mistake about it, there is a cost of success. Success does not happen overnight. It can happen quickly, but it doesn't happen instantly. So what did the company have to pay in order to achieve the success that it did? It had to, for example, there were a lot of marketing dollars. There's a lot of dollars in terms of full-time equivalents. There's marketing dollars in terms of working with vendors, working with contractors, in paying their board members, and so on. So what are all the costs of success? And when you deploy your marketing messages, they are profound and they're prolific in your marketing messages. Include in there, build in that message, build in the marketing, the cost of success. Why is that important? Because then in your audience, in those who hear it, who are making the decisions, you've demonstrated to them and they can see in your presentation that you've thought this through. That your solution that you're presenting, the thing that you're offering, the idea, the project, the budget, proposal, whatever you're offering, that's your offer. That's what you're selling. Throughout the process of developing your offer, that you're taking fiscal responsibility, that you have clarity on the cost of success. So these are the fundamentals of marketing. There are three fundamentals. Number one, it is being prolific and profound in your messages. The second fundamental is to think from the marketplace. And the third fundamental of marketing is to build in your messages the cost of success. So this is marketing. Now, three fundamentals of marketing. From there, we go to the three fundamentals of sales. And I mentioned earlier, if you're listening to this and you're thinking to yourself, well, I'm not in sales, I'm not selling anything, I'm just doing my job, I'm just here working for the company. Make no mistake about it, there's something you're selling. If you have an idea that you really do believe in, if there is a process that you've thought about, if there is a framework that you have really developed and you love for an opportunity to implement that in the company, then that is what you're selling. It could be maybe you want to transition into another team. Maybe you want to step up into a bigger opportunity. Then what you're selling is your skill set. What you're selling is your expertise. There's something that you're selling. You're always in sales. So let me offer you, just like I offered you a definition of marketing, let me offer you a definition of sales. Sales is uncovering the value of what you have to offer and being able to do that so well that people are happy to exchange what they have for the value that you have revealed. So there is a fair exchange in sales. You desire something from them as a result of successfully selling what you have to sell. So there is a fair exchange, which means that if you don't offer value, you don't get the sale. No value, no sale. This is so important. Now, it's possible to still make a sale without offering value. You may be able to coerce or convince somebody to give you money without offering value. But then what does that mean? It just screams scam. It just screams fraud and scam, right? So that's what happens if there's no value, but there's a sale. But usually, generally, especially in the business marketplace, if there's no value, there's no sale. And here's the problem with that. A lot of clients that I speak with, they come to me because they desire to be persuasive and they desire to have more confidence and a greater executive presence. So they come to me to develop those softer skills. And oftentimes clients come into my mentorship and they tell me, well, you know what? I don't like to sell. I hate sales. I don't like to be pushy. I've always been taught that it's better to be humble. And I just feel like sales is so egotistical. And I get these comments all the time. So here's the problem with that. If you don't like to sell, there's only one alternative to selling. One alternative. The only alternative to selling is buying. So if you're not selling, you're buying. You're buying someone else's solution. Or you're forced to buy someone else's solution. Or you become coerced to buy their solution. That's the only alternative. There's no other alternative to selling. So learn to love sales. And it's possible to learn to love sales if you're doing sales properly. And the only way that I know how to do sales properly is to come in a mindset where you're not selling anything that doesn't serve your audience. So this is where true sales, the most powerful sales process, is when you are so keen at uncovering the needs of your audience. You're coming to the mindset of, I genuinely want to serve my audience, and I will not sell them something that doesn't serve them. So sales is caring. And it's the most noble profession because we're offering real and genuine solutions that make a difference. So if you find that maybe the reason why you don't like sales is because it just feels so yucky, it just feels so uncomfortable. And maybe it's true because you found that you had to convince people or coax people to buy in. And if you find that you need to convince people a lot and you need to coax people a lot, well, no wonder why it feels yucky, because people hate to be convinced. The reason why sales people need to resort to convincing, coaxing, is because they didn't do a good job selling. Think about it. Convincing is not the same thing as persuasion. Today in this video, I'm sharing with you 9 fundamentals of persuasion. I'm not talking about how to convince somebody. In fact, convincing is the antonym of persuasion. It's not the same thing. They're very different. Here's what it means to convince. If I'm trying to convince you, it means that I'm trying to get you to do something that I want you to do because it's for my reasons. It's all for me. That's convincing. No wonder why sales feels yucky if you're conflating that with convincing. Persuasion is not the same thing. It's the antonym of that. Antonym means opposite. So persuasion, here's what persuasion means. Persuasion means I'm helping you to make a decision that you already want to make, but it's in service to you. It's for you. It's about you and not about me. So they're antonyms. And people are buying solutions. The only value they have is, the only value they perceive in what you're presenting with them is solution. The value is only as valuable as the solution or the problem they have. Do you know what the problem they have is? How clear are you on the problem they want to solve? People buy solutions. You think about it. You go to the hardware store and you look at all the tools that are available. There's a hammer and there's a saw. Why do people buy a hammer? Why do people buy a saw? They don't buy a hammer because they want a hammer. They buy a hammer because they want a hole in the wall. They don't buy a saw because they want a saw. They buy a saw because they want a shorter board. People buy solutions. They don't buy tools. They don't buy features. They don't buy features. So value is in the mind of the buyer. Who are your buyers? Who are the decision makers who make the buying decisions? That is your marketplace. Remember from earlier, think from the marketplace. Value is in the mind of the buyer. The marketplace, their opinion is the only opinion that matters. So the question you got to be asking is, well, where do values come from? If they have values, they already know what they value before I get there. Where are they getting those values, and how do I know what they value? Now, I've thought long and hard about this. And by the way, I think long and hard about many things. But one thing that I thought long and hard about is, well, what drives people's decisions, especially when it comes to parting ways with their money? What drives their decisions? What drives their buying decisions? And if you think about this whole thing with human values, every individual has a hierarchy of values that drives their decisions, that drives their actions. If something is truly a high value to you, that means it's really important. You make decisions according to that. You make decisions in appreciation of that. You make decisions hoping to fulfill that highest value. So where do values come from? The way to think about this is that there's 3 places where values come from. The first place where values come from in your marketplace is past perceived voids. Past perceived voids create present pursued values. So what do I mean by that? Past perceived voids means in somebody's past, in their history, if there was something that they felt was missing in their life, something that they felt either it was really missing or they perceived it to have been missing in their past, then it creates a now where it becomes really important to pursue it. So let me give you a personal example. In my life as a child, when I was 10 years old, I became homeless. My mother passed away, and my father, he made a statement that he wasn't going to take care of me. He didn't have it. I'm not clear on whether he said he wasn't going to or he couldn't. Either way, I didn't have a home. And for the next few years, I didn't have a place to call home. I didn't have that security of a shelter. And as a result of that, today, even now, the house and the home is one of my highest values because it was a true void in my past. So that's the first place where values come from. Past perceived voids create present pursued values. The other place where values come from is present perceived virtues. Present perceived virtues also create present pursued values. So what does that mean? A present perceived virtue is something that you perceive to be good for you right now. Virtues are good. It's in your judgment. It's within your within your perspective. If you notice something in the now that you perceive to be good for you, good for your life, good for those you care about, good for what you perceive in improving what you want to improve, then it becomes a present pursued value. You will pursue it. You will achieve it. You will be on the path to achieve it. And it'll be important to you. You'll dedicate your efforts to it. Right? So think about that. I'll give you a personal example again. In the moment, my present perceived virtue are the things that I perceive are good for me. For example, right now I'm at the stage of my life where I truly and genuinely want to optimize my health because I have a mission, my life purpose and mission. So I want to be around long enough to see my mission through. And my mission is going to take years because I have a huge vision. So this is a virtue. If I see something that I feel is good for my health, then I will pursue it. And these are things like devices, biohacking devices. In my home, I have a couple of massage devices. I have an electromagnetic pulse device. So these are things that I perceive that are virtues for me and my health, so I will pursue it. It becomes a present pursued value. So that's the second place where values come from. The third place where values come from is in future perceived visions that also create present pursued values. So what does that mean? A future perceived vision is when I look into the years ahead. And if I have a desire on what I want my life to be, if I have a desire on where I want to be, the things I want to have in my future, it creates a pursuit in the now of a value I want to pursue. So for example, a future perceived vision that I have is to make a greater impact in the people that I serve. You, executives, corporate executives, career professionals. My future perceived vision is to be on platforms, global platforms, where I can make a difference in your life, where I can make a difference in your life personally and professionally. So as a result of that, it creates a present perceived value, a present pursued value, where I value any opportunity to teach and to coach. So these are three places where values come from, and they're the same three places where the values are coming from your audience as well. Who is your marketplace? So this is where it gives you real clues to understand how to speak to your audience. So now let's talk about the three fundamentals of sales. We just covered the three fundamentals of marketing. This is my introduction to the fundamentals of sales and the introduction to sales portion of it. So the first fundamental of sales, number one, is to have proper sales perception. We talked about this briefly earlier when I mentioned that a lot of people who come to me and they work in my mentorship, they say, well, I don't like sales. I don't enjoy sales. And this is really important to have a different perception of sales. Change your relationship with sales, and it will change the way you show up in sales. So here is a perception of sales to have. understand that people will always pay for what they perceive is of greater value than the money they have. So what does that mean? It means that people only desire to buy what you desire to sell when what you desire to sell is what they already desire to buy. And that's the proper sales perception, which is why it's important to understand the values of your marketplace. It's important to think from your marketplace so that you can position your marketing messages appropriately to solicit the feeling in them, to develop in them, and to identify in them how to create more desire for what you have to offer. So that's proper sales perception. The second fundamental of sales is to have profound sales position. Now, I'm sure you're all familiar with positioning. You hear this all the time. Well, I need to position myself. I need to position my offer. I need to position my presentation. Now, positioning is important in sales, but it may not be what you think. Profound sales positioning is to realize that when you are presenting your offer, in the mind of your buyers, they're going to be comparing your offer to something. And chances are, they will always be comparing your offer to something that costs less and maybe that is of less value. So if you want to have profound sales position in your messages, in your presentations, it's important that you position your offer beside something that is less valuable and more expensive. Remember the cost of success. Give them something to compare to. Because if you don't give them something to compare it to, they're going to compare it to something. They're going to choose what to compare it to. And it's always something that costs less. Now, raise your hand right here where you're at. Just raise your hand. If you've been in those presentations where you needed to get buy-in, and the reason why you didn't get buy-in was because they objected to how much it's going to cost. Because they objected to anything budget-related, financial-related. Have you ever had that experience? And this is where this sales fundamental is so important. Give them something to compare to. Now, you may be great at presenting. You may have nailed that presentation in front of your board members, in front of the stakeholders. It's possible that you're great at presenting, but you were just bad at positioning. This part is really important. Give them something to compare to that costs less. Don't allow them to come to their own conclusions of what to compare your offer to. So that's the second fundamental of sales. The third fundamental of sales is to have a pervasive sales process. A lot of people that are involved in sales, they think about sales as one singular event. They think sales means when I get to the yes. Sale means when they give me their credit cards. I submit to you that sales is not the event. Closing is the event. When you close it, they say yes. When you close it, they give you the credit card. Sales is the process to get to the close. So do you have a pervasive sales process? And the better question to ask is, what is a pervasive sales process? A pervasive sales process is when you are involved in conversations with your marketplace that you are asking questions and listening to their answer. Because when you sell and you're asking them questions, the answer to your questions, their answer to it, they will tell you everything you need to know on how to sell them. Think about what causes people to say no to your offer. What causes a sale to fail? It's objections. Now, I agree they can object on an infinite number of ways. But have you been thinking through what their objections might be? And have you been embedding them in your sales process to handle the objections before they even begin, before they even become objections by the end of your presentation? So remember, one of the fundamentals of marketing is being prolific and profound in your messages. Marketing cannot happen at the point of sales because by that time it's too late. But marketing and sales happen together. They cannot be separate. You elevate your marketing, you develop in them a desire for what you have to offer. And you have a pervasive sales process so that in the process of asking questions, strategic questions, they give you the context. You provide the content of the offer, and they give you the context on exactly how you need to sell them. They tell you what they desire. They tell you what the certain outcome is and what they desire. They tell you all the hurdles they've encountered on the way to trying to get to those outcomes. And now you know exactly the context and how you have to sell them, just simply by asking more questions. Now, if you're sales professionals, you already know this. What do they teach you in sales? They tell you that if you're in a sales conversation, you cannot be the one that does most of the talking. You need to be the one that does most of the listening. And your prospect does the talking. Get your prospects talking, because when they are when they're taking action, they take action all the way to the end, and they take action on your call to action. So the same thing is true if you're not a sales professional, but you're selling all the time. Are you listening? Are you asking the right questions so that they give you the context on how exactly to sell them? They give you the context on what their objections might be so you can handle them. You can handle them before you get to the point of sale. Are you getting this? So these are the 3 fundamentals of sales. Number 1 fundamental is proper sales perception. Number 2 is profound sales position. And number 3 is pervasive sales process. So these are the 3 fundamentals of sales. We're still talking about the 9 fundamentals of persuasion. The final area of persuasion is in branding. So now let's talk about the 3 fundamentals in branding. Now, whenever we talk about professional brands, a lot of my clients come to me because they would like to change their brand, or they feel like they need a stronger brand, or they need to communicate their brand more clearly. Now, these are real world problems. So let's talk about branding. I'm going to offer you a definition of branding, just like I offered you a definition of marketing and a definition of sales. A brand is a name that you've built for yourself that affects what people believe about you. Let me say that again. A brand is the name that you've built for yourself that affects what people believe about you. So your brand is the story that people think about when they hear your name. And here's the secret that you may not realize, but you've already built your brand. You've already built your brand. The question is, do you like the brand you built? What is the brand you've built exactly? The brand you've built is not what you say it is. The brand that you built is the story that comes up in someone else's mind when they hear your name or when they see you come into the room. What do people say when they hear your name? For example, do they say, oh, your brand is someone who shows up late and does not complete work on time? Or is your brand, oh, they always make excuses and blame their team members. They don't take ownership of their responsibilities. Or is your brand somebody like, well, they're not very ambitious. They seem to be doing their job well, but they don't really seem ambitious. So what's your brand? Or is your brand this person? I can trust them. When I shook their hand, they always mean what they say. So what is your brand? You've already built your brand. So let's talk about the 3 fundamentals of branding. The first fundamental of branding is to develop a desirable skill. This is one of the most important parts in developing a brand. Develop a desirable skill. So desirable to who? Desirable to your marketplace. Who are you serving? Who do you need to get buy-in from? And what skill would be desirable to them? So that's desirability to who? But what's a skill? What constitutes a skill? The way that I see it, skill is really a synonym of wisdom. And when it comes to wisdom, there are stages at building wisdom. All stages, all processes to building wisdom starts with ignorance. When you're aware of an area of ignorance in your life. When you become aware of an area that you need to develop, which I call ignorance. So developing wisdom starts with that awareness of ignorance. The next stage of developing wisdom is to start to collect information, collect data points, collect all these facts and figures and just information to build somewhat of a knowledge base. And that's what YouTube is. So you're on YouTube. What is YouTube? It's a massive amount of information. Because you were aware of your ignorance in a certain subject matter, you go on YouTube, you consume all these videos, and you collect information. But notice, information does not lead to transformation. Why? Because information is not wisdom. Information is the second stage on the way to developing wisdom. So now you're collecting information, you have somewhat of a knowledge base. The next stage to developing wisdom now is to be able to assimilate that knowledge, all that information, into a solid understanding. Here's what I mean by that. It's possible to know about certain things and know about a topic, but not to really understand what you know. Let me tell you a story. For those of you who know me, I'm a doctor in neuroscience, which means I am a trained neuroscientist. My background is in neuroscience, life sciences, and I have a PhD in neuroscience. When I graduated with my PhD, I got my first job as Dr. Grace Lee. And my job was working at a hospital in my university. And the job they had me do was to lead a Canada-wide project, to lead that project, to improve that. Eventually, that project was supposed to improve the care of patients living with traumatic brain injuries. So this was my research project. And this was the first job after graduation. So my supervisor who hired me into that position, I was officially the lead on that project. We had a kick-off meeting with all the stakeholders in the room. And these are stakeholders who are professors in universities. They are neurosurgeons. They're neurophysicians. And these are top leaders, stakeholders who work with patients with brain trauma. So they're in the room, and my supervisor, she goes, "This is Dr. Grace Lee, and she's going to lead the project." And then all eyes turned over to me. And I tell you, in that moment, I had a deer in headlights moment, because I was so intimidated by all these people, other people with PhDs that went to Ivy League colleges. I didn't go to an Ivy League college. A lot of my stakeholders went to Stanford University and Harvard University, and I was so intimidated by that because I felt like they're so much smarter than me, and they had so many more years of experience. So I had a deer in headlights moment. But here's the kicker. As the project went on, as the research project went on, I realized I couldn't lead the project the way that I was hired to lead it. Why? Because I didn't really understand what I knew. Yeah, I graduated with my PhD in neuroscience, but this is the real world now. These are real patients who are depending on our expertise, and this was a real world application, and there was something that was not translating. My college education, my advanced degree, something was not translating into real world applications. So that's what I mean by just because you know about a thing doesn't mean you understand what you know. So the next stage, that's why the next stage of developing wisdom is to develop a solid understanding of that knowledge base. And that's not all. From a solid understanding, then you start to apply what you know. You start to apply what you truly and genuinely understand from your knowledge. But you can't start applying it until you understand it. And over time, through consistent and repetitive application, then you develop wisdom. So that is skill. Wisdom is a synonym for skill. Develop a desirable skill, which means that you've developed wisdom behind your expertise. And when you have wisdom, you can rule in your domain. Because kings and queens rule by wisdom and understanding, you too can have dominion and authority in your domain. So that's the first fundamental of branding, is developing a desirable skill, which is wisdom behind it. The second fundamental of branding is to develop that skill in others. Developing that skill in others. What do I mean by that? One of the best ways that I've found to develop skills in other people, and this, by the way, is the true definition of transformational leadership. Transformational leadership is when you develop other people into future leaders, when you harbor and when you nourish their independence, when you help them to become the best versions of themselves. That's transformational leadership. And that is developing that skill in other people. And you can only do that when you've gone through the stages of developing wisdom and you have that confidence in the wisdom you have developed. Then, only then can you now help others to develop that wisdom. And one of the best ways I've found to developing that in other people is through teaching, becoming a great teacher. Now, learning and teaching are two different things. And just because you are a good learner, just because you're a lifelong learner, doesn't mean you're a good teacher. How do you transfer that wisdom to another person so that they can take that wisdom, take ownership of that wisdom, and deploy that wisdom in their marketplace? That's how you know you've been a great teacher. And I always tell my clients who come into my mentorship program, I tell them that my mission for you is to develop your wisdom so that you don't need to depend on me for the rest of your life. You don't need to depend on me as your coach and your mentor for the rest of your life. I want you to be independent and that you can have the skill set, the framework, the knowledge, and the wisdom to be able to be independent and sustainably so. And that's the goal of my mentorship program. So how might you be able to develop wisdom in others? That's the second fundamental of your brand. And have you ever heard the saying, his reputation precedes him, or her reputation precedes her? Have you ever heard that saying? What does that mean? It means that someone can hear about you before they even meet you. And when they hear about you, or when they experience you before they even meet you, what is the experience they have of you? Does it cause them to really be excited and want to meet you? Does it cause them to have a positive story in their mind and positive beliefs about you? And then when they meet you, is there a congruency there? So that's what it means. His reputation precedes you. How do you want them to feel before they've met you? How do you want them to experience you? And is it congruent with after they've met you or at the point of they meeting you? Is it equal? Does it surprise them or are they disappointed? And that's one of the best ways that I've seen in developing a brand is to be able to share and teach what you know, develop that skill in other people. When others have experienced your teachings and their lives have changed, their perspectives have changed, their worldviews have changed as a result of your teachings, they go on to carry that forward as well, and your reputation can precede you. All right, so let's talk about the last fundamental of branding. The third fundamental of branding is to deploy your brand. Deploy means that you let it go, you put it out there. It means you implement it. It means you execute it. Deploy your brand. Deploy your brand in all that you do, because how you do a thing is going to be how you do many things. So deploy your brand in all that you do so that the people that come across you, the people that come across your path, find out that you're better at this than anyone else in your space. How are you going to deploy your brand? What have you decided your brand is going to be? Do you know what your brand is currently? What is the story that immediately pops up in someone's mind when they hear your name or when they see your photo? What is the story that pops up in their mind? And how would you like them to see you as an expert who's better at doing what you do than anyone else in their space or anyone else in your space? So the three fundamentals of building a brand is number one, develop a desirable skill, desirable to your marketplace. Number two, develop that skill in others through teaching. And number three is to deploy that brand in all that you do. Now, the activities associated with building a brand, most people are excited about building the brand and designing the brand, and they think mostly in appearances. But what's more important is planning for the sustainable deployment of that brand. It's kind of like this. You know how when people are about getting ready to get married, there's a lot of preparation for the wedding day. Have you ever noticed that? They choose the flowers, they choose their attire, what they're going to wear, they choose their bridal party, they choose the menu, right? They choose the music, they choose the venues, and there's a lot of planning for that one wedding day, or maybe multiple wedding days, depending on your culture, but there's a lot of plans for the wedding. How many couples, newlyweds, and about to get married, how many of them put equally or greater effort on the marriage that comes after the wedding day, on the marriage afterwards? Which is longer, the marriage or the wedding? So the same thing is true with developing a brand. The point of deciding what your brand is going to be and developing it, that is only but a moment compared to the deployment of your brand for the rest of your professional future, over the rest of your life on the way to your legacy. So deploy your brand in all that you do with consistency and persistency. And those are so important, consistency and persistency. Why? The consistency part is important because the journey is long. You have a long future ahead of you. Your mission, your life purpose and mission is a long-term inspirational vision. So you need to be consistent at showing up. Persistence is important because the path that leads to your dreams, the path that leads to your ambitious goals, is paved by challenges, is paved with challenges. Just like the path to get to a yes is paved with a lot of no's. And that's why we need to have persistence, so that you can weather the winters of the journey there. And you can last through the no's, you can last through the storms on the way to the achievement. So when you deploy your brand through winters, through challenges, through no's, through rejections, that you are consistent and persistent at the deployment of your brand. I do hope that my message lands in your lives and in your lives personally and professionally, and that you are able to implement what I have taught. I'd love to hear your comments and what are your key takeaways. And it's important to share your takeaways, because guess what? When you share takeaways, you get to learn it twice. Be blessed in the next week. Be blessed. Reflect on what you have learned here. And I look forward to seeing you again next week. Take care and bye for now.